think we'll go ahead and get started. We're close enough to the time. So as you can see, there's two names on here, and there's only one person standing here. So my name is Julie Clark. I am a K-3 literacy specialist with the Utah State Board of Education. And Christine Elegante, she was supposed to be here helping to present this presentation, and then she was supposed to do the next presentation as well. But she is currently up on the Hill fighting the full day kindergarten bill for us right now. And so she is unable to be here today. And so I'm just doing this whole thing, and then spur of the moment, we'll be doing her session that's next too. So she won't be able to be here with us. But just a little bit about me. This is me and my family. I have 4 kids that keep me super busy. My oldest, she's like, that's this one right here. She's my mini me. She looks just like me. Everybody will be like, oh, are you guys sisters? And I'm like, yeah, we are. Makes me feel good when I hear that. And she's like, does that mean I look too old? And I'm like, no, that means you look like you're 10, and I look like I'm like 20. But she's 22, and today she is currently up interviewing with Idaho State University to get into their master's program in psychology. So we're super excited and crossing our fingers that things work out for her today. And then I have another daughter, Savannah, and she's a junior at Fremont High. And she's my one that is like my dance cheerleader, all things girly. And then my son that's sitting down, his name is Peyton, and he just texted me and said, Mom, I forgot to tell you. He just got his braces off yesterday, and he's like, I forgot to tell you that you're supposed to pick up my retainers before 11. So that's not happening today. And then my youngest is Jace. He's 13, and he's the definition of the redheaded child. He's my one that keeps me on my toes and is my little firecracker. But both of my boys are super involved in soccer, and we were down in Las Vegas. One was playing in a tournament in Vegas this last weekend, and one was in Phoenix, and we liked the warm weather, and then we came back to like snow and freezing cold, and we were like, yeah, could we get that? We need a little more of that here, a little more sunshine. Christine, like I said, she's unable to be here, but that's a picture of her and her family. She's got a daughter and a son. She's also a K-3 literacy specialist. We work really closely together. But today we are here to talk to you about how to incorporate phonemic awareness and phonics into your preschool instruction. And so our learning intentions for today are to learn the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics, and then the importance of teaching phonemic awareness, why it's important, and some activities to implement with, I should say phonemic awareness and phonics activity, why they're both important, and then activities to implement with your preschool students. And hopefully you'll be able to leave with knowledge gained to improve best practices in literacy instruction in your preschool classrooms. So thank you and welcome to being here. And so we wanted to talk first about the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics, because there is a difference between them. And so phonemic awareness, when we talk about that, we're talking about spoken language. This is when the students hear sounds and all things in the spoken world. Phonics is when we connect that spoken language to the written language. So there is that connection piece to the writing. So when we're looking at phonemic awareness, we want to be conscious. It's a conscious awareness of individual speech sounds, both consonant sounds and vowel sounds, in spoken syllables, and the ability to manipulate those sounds as well. And then our written language, our phonics, is the relationship between those letters and the sounds that they represent. And so you can kind of see, and they also are used for code-based instruction. So you can see here, I've got the little sounds here. So k, a, t would be phonemic awareness. But when we see the letters C, A, T, and we know that C says k A says A and T says T, and we're connecting that sound to the written language. That is phonics. So why is phonemic awareness important? So we have this quote here by Louisa Moats where it says, one of the most important jobs for the teacher of beginning reading or the teacher of students with reading problems is to foster the awareness of phonemes or speech sounds. So phonemes are those individual speech sounds. It's the smallest segment, or the smallest sound in words, and to help children acquire the ability to articulate, compare, segment, and blend these phonemes. So phonemic awareness is like our foundation that we build everything upon. So if we can get students to be able to isolate those sounds and break it down and get down to that sound level, then we can build upon that when we can connect it to our letters in phonics. I also like this quote by Orton Gillingham, and it says, phonemic awareness is the foundation upon which all layers of literacy are built. Unless it is solid, the other layers will most definitely suffer, and the student will struggle to read. So again, just talking about how phonemic awareness is really important to lay this foundation so that students can build upon, and being able to, with our preschool students, we're going to start with big chunks, and we're going to kind of talk about this in a second. We're going to talk about isolating these big chunks of sound and working our way down to the smaller pieces of sound so that those students can really hone in on those individual sounds and be able to manipulate them, and that will lead them to being able to connect those to the sounds and manipulate them when they're learning how to read and blend. We wanted to touch just a little bit about Airy's phases. And Linnea Airy was a researcher who studied the phases of children from ages, this is the typical ages of development for learning to read for kids in ages 4 through 6. So this is kind of like a little bit where your preschool kiddos are, and then on into that kindergarten space, and even into first grade. So she identified 4 phases where we have the pre-alphabetic, the early alphabetic, the later alphabetic, and the consolidated. And she really wanted people to understand that these are phases. That means students are fluid through these. They're not in a set phase and then they like graduate to the next one. No, there's movement back and forth, and a student may be able to do something really well with their spoken language, with the sounds and language processing, but their writing is struggling. So they may be in a later alphabetic phase with their sounds, but their writing, they may be in a lower alphabetic phase, and they move back and forth through these phases. So in our pre-alphabetic phase, this is where our students are just beginning to identify sounds and language processing, and a lot of visual processing takes place for them to connect with. And then as they move to the early alphabetic phase, they start to process they start to do more phonological processing where they can start to pull apart sounds and manipulate them a little better. And they start with letter writing recognition. This is where they can start to, down here where we're talking visual processing, they're kind of really just kind of copying or just writing down whatever, they know they want to write something, but it's just random letters, and they're not necessarily making sense. In their early alphabetic, this is where we start to see where they can kind of connect the sound that they are hearing with a letter that represents it, and they start to be able to write that. In the later alphabetic, this is where students can now do some letter and sound mapping. They learn to read and write simple words, and then they're also reading connected text. So they're taking what they're learning and connecting it to reading and being able to connect the pieces. And then in the consolidated, this is where they kind of take off and they're soaring, and they're able to read more complex text and write more complex pieces as well. So you will probably it's really interesting to see. You know, I worked a lot with, before I worked at USB, I was a coach at Weber School District, and seeing kids come into kindergarten, we had kids in this pre-alphabetic phase, and we had kids in the consolidated phase. And you may see that as well in your preschool. And then you might see some kids that are here, and then they regress down to here, but as they learn things, they take off and could just jump right over to that phase. You know, so just keep in mind, like we said earlier, students move back and forth through these as they learn and grow and develop and progress. So our next one is, so some tips to remember when teaching phonemic awareness and phonics. So this first bullet, we're going to start with large units and move to smaller units. And what I mean by that is you're going to start by identifying the separate parts in a compound word. So if I say butterfly, you want the students to be able to pull off butter and fly. Or if you say, I'm going to give you two words, butter and fly, what are they when we put them together? And they say butterfly. So you're going to start with bigger units of bigger chunks like compound words, and then you can move to syllables. So then you could be like tiger. Here's a picture of a tiger. Let's break it apart into the two syllables. We have tie and we have ger. What do you get when we put it together? Tiger. Okay, and then you're going to move to onset rhyme, where you want them to just pull off that first sound. And when we say rhyme, we're talking about everything after the first sound of the word. So onset rhyme would be like, let's say can. I would say the first sound is k, the last part is an. What is my word? Can. So that onset and rhyme, or you give the students a word and you say can. What is the first sound? They say k. Okay. And then you get down to the individual phonemes. And phonemes are those single sounds that are represented by a letter or a group of letters. Like shop, we would have sh, ah, p. Those are individual phonemes. Now you're thinking, but shop is 4 letters, but our sh are 2 letters representing one sound. So we're talking sounds here, remember. You have to throw out that we're not looking at letters. And whenever we're working with phonemic awareness, we would never write on the board cat and say the first sound is k, the second sound is ah, because that's connecting it to the written language, and that jumps over into the phonics area. So whenever we're working with phonemic awareness, we use pictures, we can use cubes, or we just say it out loud verbally. We're not connecting it to those letters yet. At the phoneme level, when you begin with sounds that are continuous so that the students can hold those out. Continuous sounds like s, so they can hold them out to be able to get to the next sound or to pull it apart, to be able to process and think. And then move to the stop sounds. Another reason why we do this is because a lot of the times with our stop sounds, we like to add something to it, and it's that schwa sound that we don't want to add to the end of our sounds. So when we can hold a continuous sound for a little bit longer, it helps us to not say that schwa sound. So when you do move to those stop sounds, being able to pull those stop sounds apart or manipulate stop sounds, we want to really emphasize that we don't want that schwa at the end. So we don't want it to be we don't want the students to be holding it out like ba, because they're adding that short U or that schwa. And so we want it to be quick, b, because when we take that b sound and put it with bat, we don't go ba at, it's b at. So it's easier for students when working with pulling things apart with those continuous sounds first and then moving to those stop sounds. And then our next one is use physical cues or movements. So, I know that we were just emailed a thing about, I can't even remember, something where they were doing an action they had like this whole big story about every word or every letter and what the sound is making. Make up your own. They were trying to sell it for like an absorbent amount of money, and I was like, Well, it's pretty easy to say, well, makes, rub your belly. You say when you like something, and so the kids can connect that movement to the sound for something for them to remember. I think we can all come up with things on our own. We don't need to, I'm not selling any products here, but if you can connect a physical cue movement to that sound, it helps the students to retain it. They remember, because they'll remember that sound by the action. Then you could just move to, what's our sound when I say, and they can say, Okay. And then the last one is move when you're dealing with either segmenting or blending phonemes. Start with simple and move to more complex. So we're talking about start with a vowel consonant pattern. So you've only got 2 sounds. So what's our word? On. And then gradually move to where you can build upon that and become more complex, where you can have CVCs, and then we have our blend at the beginning with a vowel consonant. Then you can do a blend at the beginning and blend at the end, still working with that short vowel pattern. And then, a 3-letter blend at the beginning, 2-letter blends. So start easy and then work to more complex. We don't want to overwhelm our students to begin with. And so we're going to go through and do some phonemic awareness activities. And so it says the 2 best predictors of early reading success are alphabetic recognition, that's our phonics, and phonemic awareness. So our first one, we have fly swatter sounds. And you guys, I was like, oh man, fly swatters. I think they're in like a bucket in my attic, completely buried, like the super cute ones. So I ran to Walmart, and these are like, they're new, they're clean. Who wants to volunteer to come up and do a couple of activities? So fly swatter sounds, you could have your kids come up, stand in 2 lines. I need 2 volunteers. Who's going to be brave volunteers? Okay, here's one. Anybody? Okay, come on up. It's not going to be hard. I'm not making this difficult.
Well, at least these are clean.
Yeah, they're clean. There's no bug guts on them. No dead bugs on them. I had the really cute ones when I was like in the classroom that it's like looks like a hand or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not digging it out of the attic. So with fly swatter sounds, depending on what you're working on. So if you were working on pulling like rhyming words, so you would have your kids like in 2 lines, and it's like a competition, you got your teams here. So if I said, you guys are going to face the board, and if I said, swat the word that rhymes with, let's do house. Yeah, sorry, that's a mouse. I failed to say I failed here. First, you would go through and make sure your kids knew what the pictures were. So we have a can, a butterfly, mouse, I'm going to go with hat, sun, zebra, pie, tree. Okay, so let's try again. What picture rhymes with house? And it would be a race, mouse. Okay, let's do, if you were doing, let's do syllables. So I want you to swat the word that has 2 syllables. Yeah, good job, zebra. Okay, and let's do swat the word that begins with the same sound as truck. Very good. Tree. So, you could, as they swatted, then the next person. Oh, I feel like. Also, okay, total side note. When it's in Google, you can't see your presenter notes, right? So I have a whole bunch of presenter notes that I can't see. Always come up with your list beforehand so that you can have that there with you ready, because making stuff up on the fly is not great. So I'm trying to remember what I had in my notes. How about this? Swat the one that is the compound word. Very good, butterfly. Okay, good job. Okay, thanks so much. That's all I have. So, yeah, so just a kind of a fun little activity, and then, after if we had everybody up here in 2 rows, obviously you take turns and have the student move to the back of the line and have the next students come up. And, but based off of what I put a whole bunch of different pictures up here. Based off of what you're working on, if you're working on first sound, put stuff that you've been working on with first sound. If you're working on rhyming, get some different rhyming words up there that you can rhyme with. And if you're working on those compound words, you could even do something like, you could have a bunch of pictures that are pictures of compound words. And you could say, okay, what word is foot ball? What does it make? And then they swat the football. Does that make sense? Yes. I don't think I had one.
Because I'm clicking on Slick and then it's just not letting me move forward.
Chelsea, do you know what that is? Okay.
Slick 2022?
Okay. Thank you, Chelsea. Or whoever else. Great job. Okay. Another activity that you could do is finger tapping. Finger tapping, it doesn't take any manipulatives. And you teach the kids. Now, when you finger tap, you have to practice because littles kind of struggle with this. Okay, so you have to make sure that they're like, okay, touch your thumb to your first finger. Okay, keep practicing that. Touch your thumb to this finger. Sometimes it's a struggle for those little kids to get to those different parts, to the different fingers. So, and then you always talk to them about how you're going to start with this finger first, and then your middle finger, or start with your pointer, your middle finger, your ring finger, and then your pinky. And then if you say you want them to say a word, then you're just going to like munch it, like get the whole thing, all of it together. So what you would do is you would say the word out loud to your students, and then you ask the students to segment the word into the individual parts. So if you were doing compound words and I said, okay, the word is backyard. What are the 2 parts? Backyard. Backyard. If you were doing syllables, so back to our tiger, we could do, what are the syllables in tiger? We have tiger, tiger. If we did onset rhyme, so this one's a little trickier for kids because the rhyme part is going to be all of the fingers together. And then the onset is just going to be your first pointer finger. So we would do k and can. It's a little tricky for little kids. But if you practice it, they'll get it. Another thing that's good at getting them to be able to do this kind of a movement is like picking up pennies. And if you stick like I'm just gonna grab out here. You stick like you could do like a cotton ball or something where they have to hold it down like this so that they can only use these 2 fingers to pick things up. It really helps them to get that movement and that motion, and it also helps with their handwriting. So just some little tricks. And then to the phoneme level, if we were doing can, we would say can, and the students would say can, and then you say k, a, n, can. So finger tapping, okay? And you just tap out the units like that. So that's an easy one. Doesn't take any manipulatives. Something that you can do quick and easy with whatever you're working with. And then the next one is using sound boxes. So if you have just like a sheet of paper with little L. Conan boxes on it, you don't have to have the pictures. You can put the picture up on the board. You could hold the picture and then give them some things to manipulate. Pieces of paper, little cubes, cotton balls, Cheerios, whatever they want to use to slide. So when you're working with this, you were like, here's the picture, pie. Let's say all the sounds in pie. So you could say p, I, and then they move whatever they're manipulating into the box. So when I say p, I move the first chip into the box, and then I, and I move the second chip in. So if we did cat, we would have k, a, t, and they would manipulate that piece every time they made the movement. So over here we have, you could do either sheep or lamb with this, but if we had sheep, we would have sh, e, p. And then down here with shoe, we would have sh, oo. And then this one, getting a little more complex, you would have f, flip. We have f, ol, I, p, like that. And you'll always want to start, I know it seems weird, but you'll always want to start with 2 sound words and then move to 3 sound words and be more complex. Just because it's easier to pull 2 apart. Then you add the 3rd one and pull the 3rd one apart. Okay, so those are some activities for phonemic awareness and some different things that you can do with that. And so phonics, if a child, I love this quote, if a child memorizes 10 words, the child can read only 10 words. But if the child learns 10 sounds, the child will be able to read 353 sound words, 4,324 sound words, and 21,655 sound words. That's a big difference, you know. So if we can teach these students to connect the letters to sounds, it becomes much more impactful and beneficial for our kids than just memorizing words. And so we want to give them the skills that they can use to be able to read 3, 4, and 5 sound words. And we can do that by connecting those sounds to the letters and having them learn those. So we're going to talk for the next little bit about our alphabet arc. And this is a great way to connect letters to sounds. And there's a lot of different things that you can do with an alphabet arc. And Chelsea, they have access to the slides, right? So in the presenter notes of the slides, there are several links to different activities that you can do with alphabet arcs. There's some printable alphabet arcs. I think one of the websites has like a PDF of an alphabet arc that you can print, and all linked in there. And you can see that this one has changed the color of the vowels to make them stand out. It's up to you if you want to do that or not. These ones down here have not done that. But what you can do is when you have this alphabet arc, you can start off with simple things like having the students match up the little plastic letters onto the alphabet arc in alphabetical order and having them say a, and put the letter there as they go along. At first, though, they're just going to be matching it up by shape and what it looks like, right? So the students are just getting that in order, and they're just seeing that there's an order for the alphabet. Then you can move to when I say the name or the sound of a letter, they can point to it and be able to identify and connect that sound to that letter. So you can do this by point to the letter R, and they can find it. Or you can say, point to the letter that says the sound, and then they can point that way as well. So you can connect the sounds to the letters by just having them point it. Then you can move to something like this, where you say, find the letter that makes the f sound and pull it down. Now they've got little balls of clay just to make it more tactile also. And so that they can kind of, I don't know if that's balls of clay, or maybe they're little pom-poms, I don't know. But they can touch them and say the sounds after they've done it to try to start blending those words together. You can do something like what this little girl's doing here. They were telling her the sound, and then she would write the letter that made that sound just in the center of the alphabet arc. And they've obviously laminated them so that they could easily wipe them off with dry erase markers and do that. Another thing that you can do is, go this way. With it like this, if you don't have the plastic letters, You can also have the students trace it with a dry erase marker, practice their handwriting and connecting the letters, drawing the letters and connecting the letter name to the letter that they're drawing and the sound. And they can say A, B, B as they're drawing it. And they can just trace right on top of it because they're still in that copying, mimicking phase. So those are activities. This one is probably the most, well, this one, it's pretty complex. So this one, they have the letter I, the letter J, and then they wanted them to find the next letter in the alphabet. So then it's like pull down the K. And this one is using, they're just stamps, but instead of like using an ink pad to stamp it, they've just got some clay in there. So they stamp it in the clay. Just some tactile ways that the students can do these activities. Some other fun phonics activities that you can do is if you have something similar to these trays where they have like the clay or, you can put sand in it and have them practice saying the sound and writing the letter in the sand or in shaving cream. Or another thing with kids is like a texture thing. Get some sandpaper and they can draw on sandpaper. I don't know. It reminds me of like walking down the hall of my elementary school that had this and like touching it. Everybody wants to have something fun to touch. So just some different activities. And remember that you always want to incorporate the sound as they're learning that letter. And we want them to get that alphabet in order, and we want them to also know the sounds. But then we want to start to kind of take things out of order, so that they've not just memorized the sound, the ABC song, but we want them to actually be able to to connect those. Yeah.
So when we're planning like our lesson planning, we do like a letter week.
Yes.
So what do you recommend, like going in order or mixing it based on like the long sounds that you're saying some letters make a longer sound?
Yeah. So I would start with, when teaching the letter sounds or the letters, I wish I had my book here with me, but the easiest ones to start with are, you want to have those continuous sounds, but think of like the letter B. So like the letter B actually starts with the sound that it makes. When I say B, it starts with that B sound. So you want to start with letters that are like that, where the first sound is, well, the sound that it makes is also the first sound. Yes. Does that make sense? So, so you got like B, T, P, and then you want to do, you always want to kind of put a vowel in there, after 3 or 4, so that you can start to kind of connect like and making words, if that makes sense. And then you want to move to letters where I'm thinking I'm trying to make sure I get this right, where you want the sound is at the end. So like M. So the name is M, but the sound that it makes is at the end of M. So that's going to be the next easiest. And then you get your tricky ones like Q, where the sound that it makes doesn't have anything to do with the name of it. Does that make sense? So that one's hard. Duh. Yep. Yeah. And it doesn't make the sound that, like the sound that it makes is nowhere in the name. So those are always the trickiest. So you're going to want to save those to the last. So that's my suggestion. I'm taking my information from, I just completed the letters training. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. I know that there's letters for preschool, and I don't know how much it goes into that with them a little bit. But if you know somebody or if you have access to the letters, just like not the preschool letters, not the early childhood letters, there is a scope and sequence in the back that has a suggested order to teach the letters in. It's just suggested, but it kind of follows that same philosophy in doing them that way. So, yeah.
When doing these kind of activities,
Uh-huh.
would you start with uppercase?
Yes.
then
Uh-huh.
start with
Yeah.
lowercase?
Yeah. Uppercase and then lowercase. Yeah. Yep. And it's hard too, because then you get your kid and you're like, oh, they're writing their name with all capital letters and I don't really want them to do that. It's hard. But yeah, they start with the uppercase letters and then move to the lowercase letters after. Any other questions? Okay. I think I'm actually just a little bit early, but thank you. If you have any other questions or any other thoughts or want to ask, I'm here, and I'm going to do the next session too that's on kindergarten readiness, so I don't know if you're sticking around for that one or not. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I had a question about the phonics activity.
Uh-huh.
So what's the value of like not having like an image of something that starts with that letter sound?
Oh no, you totally can. You totally can. In fact, I probably would, especially for these, and it's just not, they just didn't have it. But you can see like this one over here is like got this little guy. I don't know what he's doing, but yeah, I think whenever you can connect sounds to letters and pictures, anything that can help solidify it is great. And with littles, they need something to connect it to, so pictures are great. Yeah. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Thank you. Anything else? Kate, thanks so much. I appreciate your time being spent here with me.